before we, if I can have Boaz's permission, before we begin, I got this little video about this new thing that I think people who go to Israel or want to go to Israel or around the world will be interested in, and Boaz is part of this, and it is called the Tour Me app. And Boaz, do you care if I take a few minutes at the beginning and just show that little video?
No, you please do that. Go ahead. That's probably more important than my lecture. So go ahead.
Well, I doubt it's more important than your lecture, but we're going to stick around for your lecture. And so we are doing that. Now, the only problem is I have to have, there. I thought I was going to have Jack tell me how to do this, but I think I found the screen that I am supposed to share. Let's see here if I can find this. Here we go. Now let's see here if I can get to the right spot. Now, if I can show you something other than my email, where are we going? There we go. Okay. Let's watch this little video here. It's just a few moments long, and I think it'll be a good introduction for us.
Shalom, אני אוהב את ישראל. אני רוצה ללכת. Hi, I love Israel. I want to go back. But the human malware has interrupted my plans along with those of millions of others. I went to Israel for the first time in December 2019. When I came home, I left part of my heart behind. I'm spending hours a day learning Hebrew, and my goal is to be able to preach in Hebrew when I go back. Because there are many like me who are dreaming of the Holy Land, two of Israel's greatest and most prestigious tour guides have teamed up to make the place of the book accessible to anyone from the comfort of their own home, church, or anywhere else in the world. Zvi Harpaz and Boaz Shalgi have guided dignitaries and royalty. Now they want to guide you. Tour Me app is a virtual tour experience launching in November 2021. It'll be available on web, iPhone, and Android devices. You'll be able to use AirPlay and Google Cast to stream to your Apple TV or Smart TV. So what do you get? Tour Me app will launch with a multitude of virtual tours and teachings from Zvi and Boaz in stunning 4K. This is not canned video from previous tours. From now until launch, they'll be recording all new content on location with a professional film crew. Each virtual tour will feel just like you're in Israel with these guides in person. Each tour has a series of locations that you'll visit on the tour. It'll recommend an order, or you can go straight to the stop you're most interested in. In addition, tour stops will offer historical, content, and fun facts. Even better, when Israel reopens to tourism, the app will become your perfect companion while in country. Using Apple or Google Maps on your mobile device, you will be able to get directions, navigate, and find nearby shops, restaurants, and hotels recommended by our guides. In addition to all this, an annual membership will give you access to live stream videos, teachings, seminars, and more. How do I know this? Boaz, Zvi, and Mirav have teamed up with my company, Burris Consulting Group, to provide all of the technology for Tour Me app. But your help is needed to make these things happen. These are the best guides in Israel. Professional high-quality app development and film crews are expensive. You can help support the launch of Tour Me app by going to tourmeapp.net and becoming part of the crowdfunding campaign. For the incredibly low price of $35, you get an annual subscription with unlimited access to all content. I want to encourage every pastor, every teacher, every Christian to visit tourmeapp.net today and sign up. Lehitrot Havarim. Bye, friends.
Okay, very good.
Excellent. Now, let me get... sorry about that. I I didn't know the tech issue of how to get back to you. So, okay, here we are, and ready to go for session number 3, the Jewish Revolts. Exciting stuff. I don't want to spend any more time. I just wanted to you all to see that. I already did my $35 to get the Tour Me app. I'm excited about it, where I can just sit in my home and tour Israel. And that'll just whet the appetite to go there and be part of the best guide in Israel right here, Boaz Shalgi, my good friend and brother. And I am glad that at 4 a.m. he got up in order to talk to us about Jewish revolts, which really have, in so many ways, I think the Jewish revolts have affected our world even to this day. Even though they're almost 2,000 years old, some of them are over 2,000 years old. Really good and exciting stuff. And so, Boaz, I'm going to pass it on over to you and ask you to teach us some good stuff tonight.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Randy, and also Jonathan Boris, who you just saw, advertising Tour Me App. Thank you so much. Randy, I also wanted to rebel against you waking up so early in the morning, but it's not going to be mentioned in the Jewish revolts, I guess. So
those of us living in the mountain states appreciate it.
Yeah. So today I wanted to talk about, a topic that in many ways shapes our history, shapes our faith and our lives even today. It's a topic that if you're not born into a Jewish world, you may find interesting in ways that you're not familiar with. And that is why today I also talked to my brother Randy and said, feel free to ask questions along the way, because I know that Christian thinking would also like to understand what was it that led the Jewish people so many times in their history to sacrifice their lives, their families, everyone else. And the questions are many. When is it necessary to do that? When is there a way to make a compromise and not necessarily go all the way to the end with your decisions? So I picked up 3 stories from the history of the Jewish people. And it's not just stories. I mean, each topic is one that you can have a degree on in university. But of course, we're limited with time. So I'm just going to touch them a little bit so you will understand more of the Jewish history. Now, remember, Christianity came from the Jewish history and from important events that took place in the Jewish history. So everything that I'm teaching you is not only because I find it is interesting, it's also things that shaped your history. So today we're going to mention 3 Jewish revolts in our history. One is called the Maccabean Revolt or the Hasmonean Revolt. The second one is what is known as the Great Jewish Revolt. The first one was with the Greeks. The second and the third are against the mighty empire of Rome. So the second one is the Great Revolt. That's also the one in which the Jewish temple was destroyed, 70 AD. And then the third one is known as the Bar Kochba Revolt, Rebellion 132 to 135. I'm going to mention the 3 of them, what initiated them, and what was the outcome, the consequences of these revolts. Let's go to the first one that I'm talking about, and that is the Maccabean Revolt. This is 2nd century BC. And Judea at that point is under the rule of the Greeks. Now, they were under the rule of the Greeks for many years, but Judea was quiet. It was even peaceful, I would say, until something happened. There's always a trigger that initiates Jewish people to get angry and do something. And you will find out as I'm talking that all three rebellions have something in common. I'm not going to say it now, but you will understand it as we speak, and I will mention it when we're going to conclude our lecture. So when we're talking about the Maccabean Revolt, we're talking about a reality that has changed, meaning that as long as the Jewish people were satisfied with the Greek leadership or the Greek rule or government or whatever you want to call it, everything was okay. They paid their taxes. They understood that they're not the big force in the area. I mentioned on our first lecture that really when you think about it, Israel was only a dot on the map of the ancient world as it is today. The Jewish people did not aspire to conquer the world, unlike many other empires in the area. And they were very respectful to those that were in charge, either the Persians or the Babylonians or the Assyrians. But when it came to interfering with the Jewish routine, with the Jewish life, and above all, with the Jewish faith, that's when the Jewish people said, we are not going to tolerate this, no matter what. This cannot be tolerated because the Jewish people that were not big in numbers, they knew that if they give in to such an idea, that's going to be the end of it. That's going to be destroying Judaism altogether, and there will be no Jews left, which was, by the way, the plan of many of the nations who wanted to conquer this land. So when we're talking about the Maccabean Revolt, we're talking about a few single events that shaped the rebellion against the mighty Greek Empire. I want to remind you, this is the empire that was left by Alexander the Great. But Alexander the Great did not hurt the Jewish people. So under him, things were okay. But his successors, they were the problematic people that decided, we are not only happy with the Jews paying their taxes, but we also want to change them. We want them to be Hellenized. We don't want them to have all their strange ideas about their one God and whatnot. We want them to adapt into our culture. And our culture means that they have to quit circumcising their children. They have to quit observing the Sabbath. They have to participate in all these games that the Romans came up with, which was Sodom and Gomorrah all over again. If you get the time to read about what all these nude games, involved, the Jewish people basically had no choice. Sometimes, even when you know that you're not going to win the war, you know that you have to have it in order to deliver a very strong message, that you're going to have to work very hard, to get rid of me, because I'm here and I'm going to fight you to the bitter end if things don't improve. Now, in this case, like many other cases, it was a couple of stories that actually initiated this huge Jewish rebellion that lasted for 7 years. That is a big deal. So it wasn't organized in the beginning. It wasn't something that someone planned ahead of time, but it was a collection of several events that caused this. And in this case, I want to mention two of the most important events that led to the rebellions of the Maccabees against the mighty empire of Greece. One was a man by the name of Matthew. His name in Hebrew is Mattityahu, in English Matthew, and he was a father of 5 sons that were all very, very good military men. And when the Greeks came to their village, they said to him, actually not to him, but to the priest that was close to him, sacrifice a pig. And the priest that was afraid for his life did it. He figured, if I'm not going to do that, they're going to kill me on the spot. So he sacrificed the pig. And as soon as he did that, Matthew, the Maccabee, the father, the priest, he right away took the sword, killed the young priest, and killed the Greek soldier that was there. And that, of course, upset the Greeks very much, and was another trigger of the rebellion, which was then led by his very talented son, Judah Maccabee. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the name Judah Maccabee, and if you're not, I strongly recommend for you when I'm done with my lecture, or tomorrow, or next week, or next month, just do some reading about Judah Maccabee, and see what an amazing general this guy was. As a matter of fact, the techniques and methods and tactics used by Judah Maccabee are still being used, or still being taught in military universities like West Point, even today, 2,200 years later. Can you imagine? So this is one story, and we'll get to that in a moment. The other one, which to me is more of the Jewish heart of what led to the rebellion, is the story that I oftentimes tell on Masada. Masada is from later on, but like I told you, there's one thing that connects all these stories into one piece, and that is the story of Hannah. Hannah was a Jewish widow who had 7 sons. And when the Greeks stormed into their small house, they said to the mother, to Hannah, "We demand that one of you will sacrifice a pig. Otherwise, we're going to kill you all." And Mother Hannah refused to do that. So they killed her oldest, and then the second, and the third. And along the way, they will stop and say, "Mom, you're not going to do anything to stop this? All you have to do is have one of them sacrifice a pig, and this will be over." And she refused. And so they killed all of them and left on purpose the youngest to the end, to put even more pressure on Hannah. And then said to her, "Ma'am, you only have one boy left. Why won't you save his life and yours too? All he needs to do is to sacrifice this pig." And Hannah said to them, "Give me one moment with my son." And she took him to the corner of the room, and she said to him, "Son, in a few moments, you're going to meet with Father Abraham. And when you do that, you tell him, 'Father Abraham, you made one sacrifice. My mom made 7. You did that as a test, and my mom did it for real.'" And then they killed him, and Hannah went to the second floor of the house and jumped to her death. And that is really, really, together with the story that I told you a few minutes ago, what sparked, the fire of the revolt against the Greeks that lasted, like I said, 7 years. Judah Maccabee was the one who first led the rebellion against the Greeks. He was then killed in battle and was replaced by his brother Jonathan, who was also killed and was replaced by his brother Simon. And that's how it went from brother to brother, from generation to generation, until in the end, the Maccabees were able to actually liberate Judea, to liberate Jerusalem, to cleanse the temple. And this is, by the way, the story of Hanukkah that we all celebrate even today, 2,200 years later. When the Maccabees came to the temple, they found a very small jug of oil, and with it, they wanted to light the menorah. They figured it's going to last for a few minutes, but it ended up lasting for 8 days. And that is the miracle of the 8 days of Hanukkah that we celebrate since then to present times, to remember what happened during that rebellion against Greece. I'll stop here for a second, Randy, and see if you have any comments, thoughts, or questions about the Maccabean Rebellion.
Yeah, I do. Judaism, if I understand my history correct, Judaism is the only ancient Middle Eastern religion that survived the Hellenization of the world. Antiochus Epiphanes, and of course, you mentioned this role of Hellenization, trying to get everyone to think Greek, act Greek, dress Greek. Basically, the whole world did it. And so all of those ancient religions that used to be in the Middle East no longer existed after that point. Why do you think, and maybe what you've just said explains it, but why did Judaism have more strength than those other religions? What was it about Judaism that said we're not going to cave in to the demands? Because it was, if I understand it correctly, there were actually pretty strong financial, for a country, financial and peace kind of benefits to becoming Greek. So why didn't the Jewish people just become Greek?
Very good. The Jewish people had all the incentives, so to speak, to join the Greek world. Join us, we won't harm you, we'll take care of you, we'll make you prosper. Everything is going to look good. If you don't, then you're risking your life, your family, everyone else. Why would you choose this path? Randy and everyone else who is listening to me, listen carefully. The Greeks and all the other cultures that were here and all the pagan nations that were here, they understood that there's something that's missing in their lives and in their culture. They may have been pagans, but it doesn't mean that they were stupid. And even a pagan knows that there's something that's not right about him building a statue and then worshiping the statue that he built. How can you worship something that you created? It just doesn't make any sense. It makes zero sense. If nothing else, the statue should worship you. You're the creator of that statue. They did that because they had no alternative in their understanding. They could not comprehend that there is one sovereign God that's in charge of all creation. So they divided that and made many, many, many different gods. And every god has its own niche, so to speak. Okay? And so when a big empire like Greece, in this case, came and said, get rid of all that, they didn't care, because that culture didn't do them any good anyway. So to them, replacing one bad thing with another is not a bad deal. Replacing a bad thing with something that may be better, they didn't know, may even be more attractive, and above all, they won't get into troubles with the boss. But the Jewish people didn't have all these things taken into consideration, because they knew that they had the God of Israel that they worship. They had no doubts about the God of Israel. They had no doubt that they're worshiping the true God that created them and not one that was created by them. So think about it. I'm a Jew. I lived 2,200 years ago. And on the stake is, who do I want to upset? The Greeks or my God? And obviously, it's easy to understand that no matter what, I don't want to upset my God. First of all, I love my God. And second, I know that God's wrath on me will be a lot worse than the Greeks or anyone else. And that is why, Randy, to your question, the Jewish people knew that they had to do that. Even if sometimes it seems like there was an alternative, truly there wasn't. Because when you know that you're on the right path, or the true path, that is the only one. And I mentioned that, and I'll keep mentioning that in every lecture that I give, that God's way may not be the easiest way, but it's the only way. And the Jewish people were very, very fanatic to that. They loved their God, and they didn't want to do anything that will jeopardize their relationship with God. In the Jewish culture, the worst thing, or one of the worst things, I wouldn't say the worst, but one of the worst things is to eat unclean animals, in particular pork. So guess what? That is the one thing that they were forced to do, to embarrass them, to humiliate them, and also to disconnect them from their God. And the Jewish people understood, if we start doing this, there's no way back. Because within one generation, two at the most, there will be no Jews left. So it's not a battle for yourself only, but also for the future of your children, grandchildren, and the future of your nation. Okay? And that is why the Jews were so committed to defend themselves, but even more so, the name and the honor of their God, the God of Israel. Does that make sense?
It does. And in relation to that, I remember a story, and pardon me if I get the details wrong, you can straighten it out. But perhaps it was Judas or one of these priests that they were being attacked on the Sabbath and all going to die if they didn't fight back against the Greeks on the Sabbath. And Judas, or whichever of the Maccabeans it was, says something like, all Jews dying out seem on the Sabbath in order to observe the Sabbath seems like a terrible way to honor our God. And they turn and they fight on the Sabbath. Do I have that story right? And is that kind of indicative of the was he right in his Judaism to say break the Sabbath in order to honor God?
Yes, this is something else that I'm glad you touched, because again, you may be confused with, so how does the Jewish mindset work? Is it allowed to fight on the Sabbath? Is it not? Should I eat the pork if I'm being threatened or not? Well, in the end, the answer is always the same answer. You do what it takes to honor the God of Israel. And specifically, if it is to fight on the Sabbath, absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. You're not going to sit at home on the Sabbath and let everyone kill you and your family and everyone else and say, hey, well, the Sabbath is over in 10 minutes, in 10 hours, so then I'll start fighting back. It may be too late. So remember what Jesus said. Jesus said Sabbath is to serve man, not man to serve the Sabbath. So yes, we observe the Sabbath, but if something greater than that arrives, then we should put the Sabbath on the side. If someone is really sick, you're going to rush him to hospital on the Sabbath and not say, hey, I'm going to wait until the Sabbath is over. Maybe the guy's going to die, because human's life is more valuable than anything else. So the Sabbath is something really, really important that we have to observe. But if something else arises that tells us, hey, forget the Sabbath for now because this is more important, then that's what you have to do. So you simply have to use your common sense and know when it's time to say, hey, now we have something that is really important. It may be even the entire future of us and our children. And so if we need to fight on the Sabbath, we'll fight on the Sabbath. 1 second, it gets too hot over here. Okay, just turned off the heating over here. For a second, I put all the heating here because I figured I'm talking to Randy and I may see or feel the cold coming from New Mexico, but it's a lot warmer over here. So
well, you all have had some beautiful snows there lately as well, but a beautiful spring. Hey, can I ask one more question about
yes, of course.
The Maccabean Revolt brought about the first time that the Jewish nation had sovereignty since Nebuchadnezzar destroyed in 586 BC. So they had always been under someone else's thumb since Nebuchadnezzar, and now they have freedom, and you've got the Hashmonean dynasty. I don't know if I say that exactly right,
You
but the
did, yes.
Maccabean kings. That Hashmonean dynasty, if I recall, lasted about 100 or 150 years. Would a Jew consider it a successful dynasty, a successful monarchy, a time of sovereignty? What was that period of like under the Maccabeans?
Yes, it was very successful. Otherwise, we wouldn't have celebrated, Hanukkah more than 2,000 years later. There were many Jewish events in our history that we don't celebrate. We mourn. We're not proud of, okay? We don't celebrate the fact that when Moses went to Mount Sinai, everyone was building the gold calf, okay? So this is a very important event, a very important crossroad in the Jewish history that we want to remember, not necessarily because of how it ended, and it ended in a good way with the sovereignty and freedom of the Jewish people, but more so because of the devotion and the dedication of people like Hannah, who was willing to sacrifice her whole family, and like Matthew the Maccabee. What triggered the Jewish people to say, God, we're with you all the way to the end, and we will give our lives if needed to honor you and to be with you. That is what we celebrate and remember so many years after. So yes, it was a successful war. And what eventually happened is that two of the descendants, great grandchildren of the original, so to speak, Maccabees, got into a big argument amongst each other. Who's going to rule Judea? Who's going to be in charge? Who's going to be the boss? And guess what? As it happens oftentimes when two people of the same side fight, then a third party comes in, and that's exactly what happens with Rome. Two of the Maccabeans were fighting. They went complaining to Rome. Everyone was accusing the other one. And so that was the reason why Pompey marched into the land in the year 63 BC. And since then, it came under the rule of Rome. So now we got rid of the Greeks, but we invited the Romans to get into here, and the Romans were not any better than the Greeks. And that is taking us to the second chapter of our lecture today, and that is the Great Jewish Revolt against Rome. And it started with, I would say, the death of Herod. When Pompey came into here, Judea was under the rule of Rome until the year 4 BC. Or I would say 4 BC is when their puppet, King Herod the Great, died. When he was alive, Judea was quiet. Even though it was under the control of Rome, King Herod the Great was powerful enough to unite, by force, by the way, the Jewish people. He was a friend with the Romans, paid them their taxes, build shrines to honor them. When you come to Israel, you'll see many temples and shrines and palaces in beautiful places that were built by Herod and his family to honor Augustus Caesar. So under Herod, the empire and Judea were friends, you may say. When Herod dies, the kingdom is being divided amongst his three sons, Herod Archelaus, Herod Antipas, and Herod Philip. And they're not nearly as charismatic as their dad was. And the Romans figured they would probably not be able to control the land as well as their dad did. So they marched into Judea. They took control over Judea. And from here on, it was like a burl of explosives. It was only a matter of time until another war will start. Because again, the Romans did not learn from the Greeks or from others previously that it is easy to control Judea and the Jewish people as long as you respect their faith. They'll give you your taxes, they'll honor you, they won't have any problems with you. Just let them worship their Judaism and don't interfere with that. but the Romans too started doing this. First of all, they put a lot of taxes on the Jewish people. And in the first century AD, listen to these guys, the Jewish people had to pay 80% tax to the Romans. Now tell me, how happy will you be if your new president will tell you you have to pay 80% tax? By the way, he's going to do that. So that, together with, again, restrictions on the Sabbath and everything else, ended with what is known as the Great Jewish Revolt. Now, this is a fascinating story. Like the one with the Maccabeans, here too, I encourage you to go. Even Google has good material about it. A lot of it was written and documented by Josephus Flavius, which is the best historian from that time period. He actually witnessed all the events that were going on here in Judea. And when he retired, he put all that into one book called The Jewish Wars. So it's a great book. If you purchase the book, The Jewish Wars, and Randy, are you selling it? Because I think you did.
Well, since you mention it, we do have it available at the Dispensational Publishing website. And let me give a little insider information. Wait till Tuesday to buy it because everything's going on 20% off. So get Josephus. We have The Wars and Antiquities and several other books of Josephus bound together.
Okay, because that will really give you a lot more knowledge and understanding about what was happening here during the war. But to make a long story short, the revolt started in Galilee in northern Israel, exactly where I am right now, and it took 3 years for the Romans to actually crash the rebellion here in Galilee. But that was the end of it. It wasn't the end of it, because from here they started marching down to Jerusalem. And in the year AD 70, after 7 months of siege, Jerusalem fell into the hands of the Romans. Jerusalem was destroyed. Thousands of Jewish people were crucified, and the temple was destroyed and burned by the Romans. What happened in Jerusalem is actually the argument that we talked about for the last half an hour. What do we as a nation, as a Jewish nation, what do we do when such a terrible situation comes to our door? And when it came to Jerusalem, the Jewish people were divided. Unlike the Maccabean Revolt, and unlike the one that I'm going to talk about later, the one that's in between, the Great Jewish Revolt, part of the failure of this rebellion is that the Jews were not united against their enemy. There were Jewish people who said, we can't fight them. Let them do whatever they need to do. Let them storm into Jerusalem. Let them build, whatever statues they want to build near our temple, only for us to survive. And there were Jewish people who said, no way, that is not going to happen. This is not going to happen. The Romans are not allowed or permitted to introduce foreign worship into our culture. So what it created is actually a civil war amongst the Jews. So while the Romans are laying siege to Jerusalem, inside the city walls, the Jews are killing each other. And that is why the rabbis later on said that the second temple was destroyed, not because of the Romans, but because of self-hatred, because of Jewish people hating each other. This is what God did not appreciate and eventually brought to the destruction of the temple. So that happened in the year AD 70, but even then it wasn't the end of it. Technically it was. When Galilee was crushed, when Jerusalem was destroyed, when the temple was gone, this was the official end of the rebellion. But the Romans decided it's not over yet, because somewhere down in the desert, there's a fortress that hasn't given up yet. And the name of this fortress is Masada. if you've been to Israel with me or with someone else, there's no way that you did not go to Masada. And if you did not go to Masada, go right now and sue the company that brought you to Israel. And you know what's going to happen now? Randy himself is going to sue me because twice he came to Israel and it snowed and it rained so badly that the road was blocked off and we could not get there.
You'll hear from my lawyer tomorrow.
But that is a must place to visit. And again, not necessarily because of the amazing ruins that are there, and they are amazing, but more so because of what happened there. And what happened on Masada is what I'm going to talk to you about in exactly 7 minutes from now. So we're going to take a 7 minutes break. Randy, I have 4:46, so 4:53 or 4, we'll be back with what happened on Masada. Okay?
We'll call it 6 minutes before the hour, wherever that is for you all. We'll take a little stretch break and come back. And when we come back, I got some questions for you, Boaz, and we'll put it in there. And so y'all take about 7 minutes till 6 minutes before the hour. We will be, we'll start back. Thank you, Boaz.
Okay, can you unmute me?
I can, or I can mute you.
I mean, mute me.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And it is about time for us to get back started here in just a moment. I'm sure Boaz will be with us. And let's see. I got to figure out how to turn Boaz's camera on. There we go. So while we're waiting on Boaz, we mentioned Josephus. It is this copy I have right here is the Essential Works, and it's a really nice full color, got lots of pictures and maps and charts and things like that in it. Again, it'll be available at dispensationalpublishing.com. It is available at dispensationalpublishing.com, but if you wait till Tuesday, it's going 20% off. I think it's regular $28.99, and so it'll be 20% off of that, and you'll be able to check that out. And again, as we wait a minute for Boaz, he's been unemployed, staying busy, but unemployed. And if you would like to give a donation to him, you can do that through the link that I put in the chat box there, or that you got in some of your information. And all of that is tax deductible and will go 100% to Boaz. So feel free to do that tonight, tomorrow, anytime you would like to. And he no doubt would appreciate all of that. Boaz, are you there yet? I don't think Boaz is there yet. So we'll give him just a moment as he comes back in at 4 a.m. I hope he didn't go back to sleep.
Oh, here I am.
There. Oh, you didn't go to bed. Okay.
I did, and Maggie woke me up.
Yes. I was pretty impressed that you were up at 4 a.m., but I was even more impressed that Maggie was up. You have a good one.
She has no choice. It's a teamwork.
Well, we're glad she came along. So I was telling people about Josephus and about the donation button also. But let me ask one more question before you get back started and lead us in this discussion of Masada, which was definitely very much a part of the second, the Great Revolt, as it's called. So we talked about the Maccabees for understanding the Maccabean Revolt, or the first and second Maccabees, the books of first and second Maccabees, and we've talked about Josephus. How accurate, like these stories you tell of Hannah and whatnot, how accurate is it? Is it Jewish tradition, or is there some basis in history that we think we can trust the book of Maccabees, the first and second Maccabees, and we can trust Josephus? Are they accurate historical records?
Yes, they are. They're very accurate, and not only that, you can understand why through these stories all these big events happened. Now, when it comes to Josephus, and I'm not going to tell the whole story. It's a fascinating story of Josephus, how a young Jewish leader that fortified Galilee became one of the Romans, so to speak, okay? It just doesn't make any sense, but if you read his biography and everything, you'd understand what happened. In any event, he was there physically. He saw with his eyes everything that was happening, and then he wrote all these books about it. So yes, sometimes he exaggerates, okay? If say 2,000 people were killed, he can say 20,000. He will add a zero. I mean, oftentimes he does that, which is very common in the ancient world, to exaggerate, to make things look bigger than they were, but not on the important things, okay? Not on what really happened, not on the consequences of the war, not on how the war started, not on the fact that the temple was destroyed. On all of these things, he and also the Maccabees are very accurate. Sometimes, stories get bigger than they were, but not the idea. The idea is well preserved, and these are not just Jewish legends or fairy tales. These are true stories that shaped our history and presence as well. Okay, so you can read Josephus and rest assured that you're reading history and not, stories. Anyway, what happened on Masada is something that's very dramatic and traumatic, very important even today. As we speak nowadays, there are still Israeli units that will swear loyalty to the state of Israel in a very emotional ceremony that takes place on top of Masada. And the question is, why? Why Masada? Why not anywhere else? This is something that you'll probably understand in a few minutes when we talk about what happened there. So let me take you back to where we stopped. We stopped with the destruction of the temple. We stopped with saying that with this, the war was over, but the Romans decided it's not over yet because there's this fortress in the middle of the desert, and there's less than 1,000 people, Jewish people living up there, most of them women and children, so they opposed no threat whatsoever to the Roman Empire. Yet the Romans decided to go there, and not only go there, they went there with an army of 15,000 people, 10,000 soldiers, and 5,000 slaves. All of this effort for what? The war is over. But you see, for the Romans, it wasn't just winning the war. It was making a statement and trying to really destroy everything that was left in Judea. And if they needed to go after young children and women in a distant, remote fortress in the desert, so be, because we are fed up with the Jewish people and we want to destroy them. So for a long time, they were not able to break into Masada because, again, if you've ever been to Masada, you'll know why. And if you haven't, Google it later and you see that it's a big cliff and it's very steep. So to come from down below to the top, you're in a big disadvantage. And that's what the Jewish people did. They easily protected themselves by rolling big stones, spilling boiled oil at the Romans. The Romans were not able to break into Masada until they came up with an idea, and that is to build a ramp. So again, if this is Masada, they went to the west side and built a ramp, and the idea was that by the time the ramp is finished, they'll storm in there and get it done with. At this point, the drama of Masada started. The commander of Masada, a man by the name of Eleazar, son of Yair, gathered the men in the synagogue and gave them a very powerful lecture. And I encourage again all of you that when I'm done, don't do anything else yet before you read the speech of Eleazar. As a matter of fact, if while I'm talking, Dr. White can find it and read it, let me know. That'll be awesome. If not, they can do it later. But if you can do it, that'll be great, because when you read the speech of Eleazar, you really understand what Judaism is all about. When he tells his friends, he said, we were never afraid of Rome. We were never afraid of the Romans. We did not hesitate before we brought our families over here. But it is time to stop, because soon the Romans will get into here. And my fear, he said to them, is not that we're going to die, but it is the fact that they will turn our sons to slaves for the rest of their lives. They will abuse our women in front of our eyes, and they will make us do things that are ungodly. So my concern, he basically said, is to honor God and not anything else. And if I need to make a decision that all of us are going to perish on this mountain today, but still honor God, then so be. Randy, you disappeared.
Yeah,
Okay.
just so I can find my glasses so I can read.
Okay.
Keep talking.
So eventually this happened with a big tragedy, because everyone accepted what Eleazar suggested, and what they did is they really committed mass suicide on top of Masada, which now take us into a different topic. Is suicide allowed in Judaism? And the answer is no, but. And the but here is, again, like I said earlier, is it okay to violate the Sabbath? No. But if necessary in order to achieve something greater, then the answer is yes. Is it allowed to commit suicide? No. Is it allowed to kill your children? No. But under these circumstances, the answer was yes. And Randy, are you ready? Can you read it?
I'm ready.
Okay, so please go ahead. And folks, I want you to listen very carefully. This is a very emotional, speech, and I'll continue the story when we're done reading. Go ahead.
This comes right out of that book I was showing earlier. Long ago, we decided to serve neither Romans nor anyone else except God. And now the time has come to verify that resolution by action. We who are the first to revolt, we were the first to revolt and are the last in arms against the Romans. We must not disgrace ourselves by letting our wives die dishonored and our children enslaved. We still have the free choice of a noble death with those we hold dear. When they are gone, let us render a generous service to each other. But first, we must destroy our property and our fortress, sparing only our provisions, so that the Romans will know that it was not hunger that subdued us, but that we preferred death to slavery.
Okay, very good. What happened next is that each man went home and told his family about the decision. And you can try and imagine what that looked like when the dad is coming here in and saying to his wife and to his children, this is what we need to do. And to me, it's always fascinating that out of all the people that were there, nobody screamed, nobody tried to run away. Even the children understood this is what needs to be done. because they were raised Jewish and they understood how important it is to worship God, to go hand in hand with God, and to not surrender to anything and anyone but the God of Israel. And so what they did is they chose 10 men to kill everyone else after each man killed his family. And then out of the 10, they drew lots to choose one to kill the 9. And in the end, he fell on his own sword and died. And now you're going to ask me, well, then how do we know what exactly happened there if everyone died? It's true that Josephus was in the area, but he was not up there. Well, when the Romans stormed into Masada, they found 2 women and 5 children alive in one of the caves. And we don't know why they were alive, but historians say that the only thing that kind of makes sense to us is that this was a family of a father who went home and simply couldn't do it. So he was killed, but his family was hiding in one of the caves, and they told the Romans exactly what happened. And that is also why we know that the story of Masada is so accurate. What happened with them, we don't know. Josephus doesn't say. But in the end of Masada, Judea was, military speaking, crushed. The temple is gone. Galilee is on its knees. And now the last fortress, after nearly 4 years of fightings, is crushed as well. But the Jewish people did not lose their dignity. They did not lose their faith. And even their enemies got to learn to respect them a lot more. And even the Romans and many who came later on and dominated Judea, they knew we can do that as long as we leave the Jewish people to worship their God and do their things without us interfering. Because if we do, then bad things will happen to us as well. So don't think that the Romans had, a walk in the park during this war. Thousands of Romans also lost their lives over here. And so, like I said, now there's no temple. And now there is a decision, what are we doing? Jews are not allowed to live in Jerusalem anymore. Jews, those who are left, are deported from Jerusalem. But here is what is so amazing about the Jewish rabbis back then. Basically, what they said is, hey, our faith is a mobile religion. We can take it from one place to another. We don't need a big statue somewhere to worship because that's not our faith anyway. So if the circumstances right now forbid us from getting to Jerusalem, building the temple and worshiping over there, we'll take our faith and go somewhere else. And so they went to Galilee, and that is how a big Jewish presence over the years started in Galilee, because Jerusalem was not accessible. Now, one would think that when this revolt ended, the Romans will never do that again if they wanted to peacefully control, the land. And not only Judea, 2/3 of the world back then was under the control of Rome. And what eventually caused the collapse of the Roman Empire is their lack of sensitivity to those that were under them. If we go back to Alexander the Great, he was great, not only because of what he did at a very young age, not only because he conquered 3/4 of the world, but because he knew how to respect those that he conquered. He enabled them to have their own self-governed and autonomy and whatnot, and did not interfere in their worship. And so people were happy. And where people are happy, they're not rebelling and going to war against anyone. But the Romans failed in doing that. And that is why, because they kept torturing the people that they conquered, there were so many rebellions against them that in the end, they simply could not handle them. They could not send their armies to all these different parts of the empire to take care of all the rebellions that started against them. So like I said, one would think that after the 70 AD rebellion, the Romans will learn something, but not really. because 60 years later came another revolt, and that is the one that is going to close our lecture today. It is called in the literature the Bar Kochba Revolt. The Bar Kochba Revolt is a very important one, very interesting one, and it lasted for 3 years, between the years 132 and 135 AD. And the way it started is that when one of the Roman Caesars, Hadrian was his name, came to Judea in the summer of 132, and he decided for his pleasure that Jerusalem is going to be a Roman pagan city with statues and temples and whatnot. And the Jewish people begged him not to do that. They said, we pay you your taxes, we honor you, please do not hurt Jerusalem. Please don't hurt our religious feelings. And Hadrian Caesar not only did not listen to them, he said to them, what are you talking about? What are you complaining about? This land here does not even belong to you. This land belongs to the Philistines. And he renamed Judea Palestine in memory of the Philistines. Obviously, he was not very good with his history, because when the Philistines came to here, the Jewish people were already here. And when he was talking, the Philistines were long gone. So this argument of the Philistines has no any base, because he wasn't really representing the Philistines, but representing himself only. But in any event, what happened is that the Jewish people said, we're not going to tolerate that, because now, more than the Great Revolt, and maybe in a way even more than the first one of the Maccabeans, the Roman agenda was not to win the war. The Roman agenda was to destroy Judaism altogether, simply to destroy the Jewish faith. And they said there's two ways of doing that. One, we're going to kill all the Jewish people. Two, we're going to look for the rabbis first, because if we get to kill all the rabbis, then that will help getting rid of the Jewish faith. So they went on a mission to hunt all the Jewish rabbis, and the chief rabbi of the time was one of the giants in the Jewish history. His name was Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was an amazing rabbi. He was 40 years old. Back then, that was old. When his wife, Rachel, said to him, Akiva, he wasn't a rabbi then, she said to him, why don't you go study the Torah? And Akiva said, honey, this is too late. I'm a shepherd. I'm 40 years old. I know nothing about the Torah. And at the age of 40, I don't think it's a good idea. But one day when he went out with his flock, he had a rest in a cave. And while he was in the cave, he saw drops of water coming from the roof of the cave. And he went and followed the water and saw that the drops of water led into a big stream of water. And then it dawned on him that it's never too late. Even one drop at a time, one piece of Torah at a time will eventually lead into a big river of knowledge and wisdom. So that is when he started learning the Torah at the age of 40 and became one of the greatest rabbis ever in our history. Usually, when there was a military conflict, the rabbis were those who advised the generals of the army, don't go to war. If you do that, bad things will happen. We're not going to win. And who knows what's going to left of us when the war ends. So try to negotiate peacefully with the enemy. But in this case of Rabbi Akiva, he came to the chief of staff of the Jewish forces, Bar Kochba, and he said to him, you have my blessing to go and fight the Romans, because this time when you're not allowed to keep the Sabbath, when you're not allowed to circumcise the Jewish kids, And when you're not allowed to do anything that's Jewish, obviously Judaism will not survive for too long. So you have my full blessing to go fight against the Romans, and I will do everything that I can to support you. So needless to say, that being such a charismatic rabbi and such an influential rabbi, the Romans captured him and they brought him to Caesarea. It is the same Caesarea that you're all familiar with, Caesarea by the sea, the place where Cornelius was baptized by Peter, the place where Paul was held for 2 years in prison before sailing to Rome. It is the same Caesarea that Rabbi Akiva was brought to, and in the amphitheater, in the arena of Caesarea, is where the Romans tortured him. They tortured him, but they didn't want to kill him right away because they wanted everyone to see what happens to Jewish people that disobey the Romans. And as he was bleeding to death over there, and as his voice was weakening, he kept reciting, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. And when his disciples said to him, Rabbi, why do you keep praising God when you're in such big pain and agony? His answer to them was, these are the moments that I want to show God how much I love him. And then he died short while after that. And what a lesson that is. This really concludes my entire lecture today. To show God how much I love him. It's not about me. It's not about my family. It's not about anything that's close to me. It's all about God. And what is a better way to show God how much I love him than now? In other words, how easy it is to show God how much we love him when everything is beautiful in our lives, when we have a newborn baby in our family, when our football team wins, when we win the lottery, when we cut a good deal on the stock market. But truly, how many times do we give praise and glory to God when things go downhill in our lives? And this may be the big difference between the Jewish culture and other cultures of the time. The pagans had no problem switching gods left and right. If one god disappointed them, no problem. We have a different god that we're going to worship the next day. Then if he doesn't do a good job, there's 200 gods waiting in line to be replaced, or to replace that god. The Jewish people never believed in that. There's only one God, and you go with this one God all the way. And if it's good, then great. And if it's bad, that doesn't matter. We still love God, and we will still show God how much we love him. And this is what Rabbi Akiva did. The outcome of this rebellion was that 600,000 Jewish people were killed. Tens of thousands of Roman soldiers were killed. The Jewish people were deported from the land. The land was pretty much Jew-free when that war ended. But again, the Jewish people took their faith with them to wherever they went and kept Judaism alive. And that is how 1800 years later, when we came back to our land, the same land that we had to live under very sad circumstances 1800 years ago, we came back as Jewish people, as proud people, and as people that can talk to God and say, God, we love you. We always did. And we always kept our promise to worship you no matter what. And so when you think, why is it that the Jewish people have survived all these years? How is it that the Assyrians and the Persians and the Babylonians and the Egyptians and the Assyrians and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Jebusites, how is it that they're all gone and the Jewish people are still here? This is the answer, because God knows how to reward his people. Okay? And I bet you that in 200 or 300 years from now, when you're going to look from wherever you're going to be on what is happening in this world, you're going to see so many changes. I don't know if America is going to be the superpower of the world in 200 years from now, I don't know where Russia is going to be. I don't know what's going to happen with China, but I bet you this, the Jewish people will still be here. So my advice to you, be friends with the Jewish people. My brother Randy already contracted with me about 15 years ago and said, Boaz, you promise me that when the time comes, you will enable me to hold the corner of your shirt or whatever and go to heaven with you. I want to be stuck with a Jew when I do that because I'm going to be on the safe side. And I said, Brother Randy, it is guaranteed. So with this, I'm going to conclude my lecture. And if you remember what were the first words that I said when I started it, I said that you will understand in the end what is the thing that is common to all the Jewish revolts. And that one thing is the faith and the love to the God of Israel. If not for that, the Jews would not have risked themselves or their families or anything else to do that, because the price was a heavy price. But when they knew that it is either sticking with our God or giving in and worshiping foreign gods, that is not even an option. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Thank you for that presentation. And I want to ask a couple questions before we go tonight. So 135 AD, 600,000 Jews dead, the rest of them deported. How long was it before there was a viable Jewish population, either in the land of Israel or in Jerusalem itself?
The Jewish people started coming to Judea in very small numbers about 200 years ago, but they were a minority. They had zero influence. And so you can really say that the beginning of the 20th century, before the Holocaust, and in particular after the Holocaust, that's when Jewish people in bigger numbers started to come back.
Absolutely amazing. And yet, through all that time of being out, this goes back perhaps more to the revolt in 66 to 70 AD. The Jewish people did things to remember the destruction of Jerusalem. For example, at their happiest times together, to come together for, say, a wedding. Tell us a little bit about the wedding ceremony and how it reminds them of what happened in 70 AD.
Okay, so if you ever participated in a Jewish wedding, you probably noticed something that's kind of strange, because like you said, Randy, everyone is happy, the bride, the groom, the family, but all of a sudden in the middle of all that, the rabbi brings a glass. He lays the glass on the floor and the groom has to break his glass with his foot. And that is in order to remember the destruction of the temple, meaning that even during our most joyful moments, we should never forget the destruction of Jerusalem, and that is by breaking a glass.
Yeah, amazing how those the things left from those revolts lived on through the Jewish people. And basically those three revolts, tell me if you agree or if I'm wrong on this, those three revolts are almost the psyche of the Jewish people that keeps them going.
Yes, absolutely. It's in a way also it is us honoring, our ancestors, because if they did everything that they did, so we will be here today as Jewish people. Otherwise, that wouldn't have happened. I would have been a pagan, speaking to you today, or maybe not, because you wouldn't care about what I have to say. But we need to continue the legacy. We need to continue fight for the same things and values that they did. So in 2,000 years from now, our great grandchildren will say, we honor the generation, of Boaz and Maccabee because they did so much to protect God. And speaking of that, our son Eliah, whom you know personally, got his letter from the army that he's going to join the IDF in 2 months from now.
Excellent.
And he said, Dad, I'm so proud that I'm going to be serving in a combat unit just like you did to defend my country. So
excellent, beautiful. And Elia, our best, as he goes into the best there is in warfare. And your son and daughter as well have both served. Beautiful. Well, thank you for joining us. In just a moment, I'm going to let everyone say goodbye. But I do want to thank everyone for being here and remind you that Boaz doesn't get paid anymore because he doesn't have any tourists. So go to tourmeapp.net and you can look into getting that app. And I really think it's going to be a good thing. I'm excited about it. And then also, if anyone would like to give a donation, I did put the link in the chat box, or you can contact randywhiteministries.org and we'll make sure all of it gets passed through onto Boaz. And we appreciate it and look forward to seeing you again, Boaz from Galilee. Thank you for joining us. And I am going to allow people to unmute their microphone and say a goodbye here before they leave.
all right.
Take care. God bless everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Boaz. Thank you.
God bless. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Boaz.
Thank you, Boaz.
Thank you.
Thank you, Boaz.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Boaz.
Boaz, tell Daron hello.
I'm sorry?
Tell Daron hello. Let's
I
build
will
it.
do that. I will do that.
Yeah. How's he doing?
No,
He's doing well. He's doing well. I'll do that. Thank you so much.
Here.
Daron, our favorite driver. Tell him hello. God bless you and everyone. Thank you, Boaz, for joining us, and each one of you.
Thanks so
who
much,
joined
brother.
us, too.
Thank you so
We
much,
love you,
everyone.
Boaz.
we enjoyed it.
Thank you.
That just tells people, I mean, really,